We were live?
All right.
He lied to me.
So, this is another episode of the Eavesdrop. We are back. Well, our peer, Inquisitive Q, he was out. But as we all know, we didn't do an episode last week. As y'all see the blinkage on the finger.
Hey.
Great, man. Yeah, you see that? You see that, John? Boom, boom. Hold on. Can I dab? Can I dab?
Good drink.
I got a wine.
Congratulations. I love it.
So we back. I wasn't going to stay gone for too long because I like doing this. I like talking shit and I like bringing a different perspective, which we do in terms of also, just trying to have a discussion. So as we have always done, before we get started, today's conversation is going to be on whether or not the student debt relief is a racial justice measure. There's been a lot of chatter about whether or not it is a racial justice initiative. I think most of us can agree that it is a good initiative, but I think the nuance here is that
it has good faith. I don't want to say good initiative. I don't make that nuance.
We're going to get into that. Okay. We're going to get into that. So before we get started, can everybody like the video, share the video out, and as we're having a discussion, comment, and at the top of the hour, 8 o'clock, please call in. And the reason we do 8 o'clock over here is just because we want to get our takes out. I want my team to get their takes out so y'all can hear what we talking about and what our opinions are so that y'all can bring the smoke. Because I want the smoke. I love the smoke. I haven't got enough smoke.
Hold the balance, though. Hold the balance.
No balance. And
smoke mesquite, smoke salmon, smoke phrases. Y'all can tell I'm hungry.
Smoke reeds. Smoke chickpeas. But nah, do that, please, because again, that's the easy way to show support. We try to have a conversation. We're in the nation's capital. But with that being said, we are going to get started. And so, first things first, let's go around the room. Because everybody had their own particular take on whether they believed or not it was a racial justice issue. I think most people know that I don't believe it's a racial justice issue. And not because I don't necessarily, again, think that it's not a good idea in good faith, but for the information that we're going to show you all that I have access prior to is why I don't necessarily believe that it is an issue that's going to fix Blacks and specifically African Americans as a part of that. But what you think, Q, and then what you think, Quan, in terms of whether you see it on the racial justice spectrum?
I'm not a huge fan of the DNC. I'm not a huge fan of Democrats. I'm an independent, strongly. And the reason I put that is because the Democrats have a habit of making social issues a cover for their very clever ways of bailing out the white middle class. And this is what I mean by that. Is that this initiative, it helps a class, and I'm in that class of
outliers
and Black Americans who have the ability and everything to do all that other jazz.
I am as well, for transparency.
So we will benefit from it. We will benefit greatly from it. Like literally, I was like, whoo, I can get another house and all that other stuff. But the problem is that when you look at and we're gonna get into this later, the sociological evidence, racism is not just a monetary thing. You can't pay racism off. So in long story short, even if they did give basically this debt jubilee, which it really isn't scheduled or structured as a debt jubilee, even if they gave the 1.6 trillion, it wouldn't help Black Americans, even of us, because stress and those untangible factors of stress, worry, and all those other things that we don't have access to.
Social capital is another one which we always talk about.
Would make it so that you got white people who benefit who don't have the same problems, but Black people wouldn't because of the way people think, not necessarily because of money.
Okay, I can dig it. Quan.
When I think about this solution as far as solving the student debt, I just really think that it's another one of those trickle down ideas of let's fix the top and hope that in fixing the top, opportunities flow downward to the bottom. And that's problematic because since what, the 80s, the late 70s, that's literally been the blueprint to solve all of our modern issues is fix the top, fix the people at the top, give the opportunities to those who are in the power, give the businesses, the people that generate the money, the people who have the affluence, the intelligent. We depend so much on fixing the people who have the most and depending on them to give to the least of us, when really it should be in reverse. And what you'll see throughout our discussion is that this only fixes, people that are able to matriculate to the top or have access to the top, but rarely does that fix anything that actually happens with the people who need it the most.
Gotcha. Okay. So with that being said, we like to use articles over here. And so I'm gonna start off with this fave that we have from the Atlantic. Let me see and pull this up so make sure that everybody can see what we have over here. And that we all are sharing the same screen. And so, as you all see the title, white college graduates are doing great with their parents' money. And that is July 20th, 2018 from a Adam Harris. Let me blow this up a little bit for you all so you can see that. So, we're going to jump down here. It says the numbers are staggering. White Americans with a college degree are on average 3 times as wealthy as Black Americans with the same credential. And in families whose head of the household is employed, white families have 10 times the wealth of Black ones. On the conservative end, suggested that this wealth gap could take 2 centuries to close. And for all of those who don't know, the jargon, that is 200 years minimum. 200 years minimum. As we move down further, a forthcoming study, which we'll get into later, from Machete and Joanna Taylor, also a researcher at Brandeis, I believe is how you pronounce that, in the American Journal of Economics and Sociology, make the point clearly. Building on a 2017 study of theirs that examined wealth accumulation among college graduates, as well as intergenerational financial transfers. For example, like when a parent helps a recent college grad out with rent, or say gives $1,000 a month to spend on whatever she or he pleases.
Ooh.
The two look specifically at how family inheritance, which are usually larger and tend to come all at once, factor into building and maintaining wealth. As we move a little bit further down, The two researchers focused specifically on inheritances among families where at least one parent has a college degree. They looked at families like this in order to test the notion that higher education is a great equalizer. The differences that they found between black and white families were stark. Among college educated families, black families, my apologies, about 13% get an inheritance of more than 10,000 as opposed to 41% of white college educated families, Taylor said in a release announcing new research. More specifically, white families that receive such an inheritance receive, on average, more than 150,000 from the previous generation, whereas that figure is less than 40,000 for black families. Getting a college degree can, in some cases, help close the income gap, meaning annual earnings, income. And, as I've written, can do wonders for socioeconomic mobility. But the enduring legacy of slavery and centuries of de jure and de facto segregation have led to the wealth gap that is practically insurmountable. And what I want to say before I let you speak to this article specifically, de jure and de facto, that is when we're talking about the laws that have been put in place, whether you're talking about from black codes, redlining, the exclusion of the GI Bills, and just on things on top of things. Those legal precedents set social precedents, which create the game that everybody, quote unquote, plays. So you're playing a game built on social precedent that was developed by a racist legal precedent, which is attached to the economy now. And I just want to touch on a few things before I go ahead and let you finish, because I want to get into what I appreciate about this article in terms of it made the distinction between income and wealth and how people have the ability to subsidize their lifestyles, their living arrangements, and how that feeds into or circumvents the actual ability or non-ability to pay back a student loan. Because in some cases, which we'll get into later, we also have to factor in this phenomenon that we saw over 2020, 2019, where people are exploiting the minority clause and using that to access college. So with that being said, my question to you is, what do you make of the, white Americans having 3 times as much wealth, 10 times as much wealth as black Americans in terms of, as it relates to our, collegiate position or our position in which we've acquired a certain level of education, of expertise. What do you make of that? Because as you mentioned, you are, of the outlier community. So I would love to hear your thoughts.
As Tone puts it, I'm boomerhood. I am very much boomerhood. But I am smiling here right now because I am so glad I stepped away, y'all. Because how Dave Chappelle went off on SNL, I was feeling that energy. And I felt that energy because people need to be shocked into reality and stop being entertained into a fantasy.
Yeah.
And so why I'm smiling is because you read, I don't know if I sent it to you, and I don't know if you're interested in that nerdy stuff, but you read my second white paper.
Yes.
Social capital, plug to capital, drain to opportunity. So what I mean by that is we see what the Color Law by Richard Rothstein really means and what the legacy of segregation really means. It means that Woodrow Wilson taking black people out of federal government jobs, and FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, I'm getting that wrong, but FDR giving white people an opportunity to afford housing and explicitly excluding black people. That's the history of redlining. So seeing that white families are able to not circumvent, but to support their children while they're young to do things, it keeps the economy going because now their children are able to buy, and we know we're in a consumer economy. But if their children weren't able to do that, then we would see the true hurt and the true pain because you have a whole generation that literally couldn't afford their rent, that literally couldn't afford their clothing, couldn't afford anything. So that is a true problem with a one generation supplying another generation. But because you had that segregation, you have a really big divide in between the different lifestyles.
And yeah, before I go on to my point, what y'all see on the screen is the white paper. I'm just stunting y'all a little bit. This is a preview. We ain't finished because, hey, we coming at y'all with that fire flame. Everything you see here is going to be, I'm the visual person. This is over here, my writer, the hitter, and from academia, and we going to get through this. Y'all see this on the screen? Y'all see this on the screen? Boy, hold on. You see them? And y'all see the motherfucking footnotes? Woo! Hold on. We coming with that fire. Because everybody know. Niggas think we not playing. Because I want academia to hop out there. You know how I got beef with them. They some slaves to the politicos. And these politicos ain't got no heart, no justice, no principles, no integrity. Now, let's get back to it. Thank you. In regard to that, hey, look, man, it is what it is. This is a very long-term endeavor. So, with that being said, my thoughts from that particular article as it pertains to, how the inheritance, breaks out. I think what we don't necessarily speak on enough is the accumulated wealth over time. And as I mentioned before we started, exactly. And as I mentioned before we started, the wealth that comes from a stabilized community or the wealth that comes from the social capital that you have. Shout out to Antonio Moore. He just did a video with the white young lady from MSNBC who was willing to have an honest conversation, and she spoke on the infrastructure.
I think we need to emphasize how many white women are also a part of this argument for Black liberation. Because if we do that, then we also get those token Black people out there spaces too. We got to be honest about people and their intentions and show that there's a historical legacy of white people doing that. I feel like Dr. Cornel West at this moment talking with my hands. But Cornel West is a good person to follow to what I'm talking about. Listen though.
Nah. So with that being said, they had a very great conversation about the infrastructure that is accessed through the family unit of whiteness overall, rather it being discussed as this dichotomy between white men and white women, which pointed to and further built a foundation on top of the overall elephant in the room, which I feel is in terms of like, look, I get that student loans are a hurdle for most people, but what I need for, and this is not just to quote unquote white people, this is also to POCs who have been also elevated in terms of their economic position, to understand that when we are talking about absolving the loans of millions and millions and millions of Americans understanding, which we'll get into later, the actual percentage of African Americans, quote unquote, do not measure up to validate it as a racial justice initiative because it does not affect our community. Like we just said, we are anomalies and outliers in this room.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, doing that would put me in a position where I would have to cater more, even more to establishments because their wealth would have been calcified at that extent. And I think what we also have to understand in that when we talk about white families overall, POC families overall, is that everybody does not have the same ideological position. And what I mean by that, go ahead. What I mean by that is what we have to get to and understand is that when we absolve people's debt based on an economic position, you don't understand that you may free up 5 million people who are in opposition to you in terms of, again, having the inheritance, having the wealth, not having to exhaust those resources on student loans when you've already been given. Check out the book When Affirmative Action Was White. When you've been given subsidy after subsidy after subsidy after subsidy, whether it be land grants, GI bills, affirmative action, and so on and so forth. I think that's what we have to get back to, but go ahead.
I wanted to clarify one thing. When you say POCs, are you saying white passing people of color?
Yeah, when I say POCs, I always mean POC in the term, because, you know, I'm taking black back.
Exactly.
Because historically, black was created to represent
economic tool. Who was capital and who could own capital.
Exactly. It has transformed into something else, but I really believe that because we have the term POC, I think it is fair to give back black to African American, and those be used interchangeably instead of black and POC.
Okay. Because the reason I asked that is because one of the things we have to acknowledge in America narrative is also colorism. Because not every POC is in the same position as Alexandria, Ocasio, or Cortez. That is my perfect example for white passing POC. And where I bring in AOC is that the squad is a perfect example of why identity politics is dangerous. Is that the squad can get in front of any narrative and frame the narrative personally enough to make it possible that someone was willing to lower their defenses, lower their skepticism. And what I mean by that is to say that when we say POC, people of color, we need to understand how complex it is to say someone is Mexican in Honduras. So two totally different places, two totally different cultures. We also need to understand what it means that people speak Spanish, but they don't look like a Spaniard from Spain. We need to understand our geography. And the reason, this is why this is so important, because if you understand your geography, then you also understand the person's economic position within America and why they will vote a certain way. Because there are affluent POCs, the same way they are affluent Black ADOS, the same way they are affluent African Americans. Because we got to get to the point of capital thinking it's capital.
50 Cent.
Well, exactly. Blackface, white mask, Franz Fanon.
Obama.
Exactly. And did you see Cornel West?
I saw that on the AP jump. I saw it on Twitter where he was talking about how Obama needs to talk about how he actually got there and how capital works. I don't think I saw AP small short video in terms of him talking about where we were and this being a possible Obama third administration.
I saw that. Yeah,
that's the one that I saw. I don't think I saw the one that you were speaking
He was talking about the book release and he was promoting that video on Twitter. But what you mean by that, because he talks about corporatists. When we get into this thing, and before we move on to the next article, I want to say this. As we talk about the second civil rights movement, which is the civil rights movement of the 1960s, The first one was in the 1860s with 1866, as well as the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment that is constantly violated in America when it comes down to our population, especially through business. The exploitation of Black American narratives and African American narratives is the same exploitation of saying, well, the Rockefellers did this and the Rockefellers controlled that. It is akin to being anti-Semitic, because what you're using is a group of people who are institutionally deprived of the resources to have their own narrative. So you take their history and you say, well, we're going to give a 1.6 trillion gift to white America, basically.
Mm-hmm.
The same way the projects were for white people and not necessarily Black people, is that you give one more wealth creation opportunity. You had Homestead. That's how we started here. You had the Homestead. Negroes, because we're Black then. No, you got to put it there. We came from niggers to Negroes. This is census. This is government. We went from that. We tried with the Freedmen Bureau, but you had the Redeemers and the start of the Klan. We got to acknowledge that throughout all those times, white America was getting wealth creation opportunities. And not only that, they were able to restructure their debt. And that's what this really is. It's a restructuring of debt. Mm-hmm. And you put it on the lens of, and you're cloaking it with, well, it's going to help Black people. I'm telling you the truth. If I was a cynical asshole, as most people think, I would shut the hell up because it would benefit me.
Yeah.
I would literally get to the point where it's just like, no, I'll be a token. And here's the truth, and I'm gonna get off my soapbox for now. When you're inside these boardrooms, or when you're inside these rooms with these quote unquote white guys, it's like a lot of you all have been protected by your fathers for so much that you don't know shit about the world. I have the great misfortune and fortune to have fought for myself long enough that I'm aware and I understand the value of the moment. There's a lot of incompetent, Michael Eric Dyson talked about this. There's a lot of white mediocrity that try to pretend that it is there. How many times do we have to see people commit fraud by using identity politics? And I'm removing it just from white. It's like people committing fraud with these identity politics. They're not being true to who they are.
They belong to being the 8th 9 layers of hell.
Exactly. So what we got to get to the point of is using the color line and say, this is how you may have gotten to this point of looking at capital, but not that be a determiner. Because this is slightly a racial justice issue, but here's in our cap it, really, this is our cap it. If they wanted to make college education a racial justice issue, HBCUs every year would have an earmarked budget that was an endowment that allows any ADOS person to attend for free. I repeat that. If we wanted to make college education a true racial justice issue, HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, on the federal budget, so the state couldn't impugn it. They have to ratify, but they couldn't impugn it. HBCUs will have an endowment that it allows for every ADOS, American descendant of slavery, to attend for free. If you do that, you would attract talent because now you have professors that are able to generate their own research. And then we can have more R1, or you know how you got D1?
Yeah.
Because people don't know this about institutions. You know how you got D1 schools? You have R1 schools. This is what Umar Johnson is always talking about. You need someone that's focused on your history. And that's what you're doing when you give 1.6 trillion people $1.6 trillion to PWIs, predominantly white institutions, that say it's a racial justice issue. It isn't.
And before we get into the next article, you know, something that has come to my mind now that when I think of that, when you talk about, you know, giving windfalls to predominantly white institutions, I think what we also have to discuss and talk about is the fact that how do we penalize not just media, but education, academia, them subscribing to a capitalist model and exploiting individuals of all races and feeding the narrative that education is the way to prosperity. Because I don't know this is fact, don't quote me on this, but in the absolvement of student loan debt, does the lender benefit in some way? Because all loans aren't necessarily backed by the feds, some are private. So to your point, when you talk about the framework and how it's being done, it also speaks to like, are we really helping everybody?
I love that. Let me jump in before I forget this. I was thinking about this earlier. I was thinking about a topic. So okay, this is interesting. They're treating because I saw how Biden has it. It's not like a debt jubilee where we're just going to forgive everybody loans. It's like no, it's structured.
It's very structured.
It's structured, so it's like a contract. So your loan, they may pass it, but you may not get it, and you may have to jump a lot of hurdles and a lot of semicolons and periods before you can actually see that, and it may take years to get it. But they in office the whole time you're trying to get your money. Again, Betsy DeVos revealed in private corporations that promised student loan forgiveness, and they didn't do it. But anyway, they're treating it like a capital investment, basically. What they're saying is that if you go and take out this debt, we quote unquote promise you that when you come into the corporate world, you will be able to pay it off. And we know that's a lie.
That's a lie.
Why we know it's a lie? Because Google got to a point where they said we don't necessarily care if you got a college degree or not. There was a conversation about is this generation over-credentialized? And I have personally heard from people who said that they're disappointed by college graduates because they don't know anything. You have to understand, bro. The paper chase. I love the paper chase. I think it's 1970 something. I don't give a shit. But anyway, you got the paper chase. They aren't their fathers. They haven't. What I mean by this is that the helicopter parents and the lawnmower parents, you know how black people go, I denied you the struggle. They literally denied their kids the struggle. So they have a lot of theory, but they don't have a lot of personal experience. So the calling of the American mind is that we have over anxious kids because they've been they had helicopter parents and lawnmower parents. They haven't emotionally developed to understand how to use their intellect. You have to emotionally develop to understand how to use your intellect and when your intellect is important. So right now they're treating it as a capital investment. It's like if you go out there, you get an education, you get a good job, they're assuming. But the problem is with America, and this is going to be me zooming out, on a macro level, China is set to be the world's largest financial capital. And I know a lot of people, and I literally personally know a lot of people who learn Mandarin and everything else because they anticipated this happening. But the problem is with that is that they have a one China initiative. So Biden-Harris is going to be more focused on that international trade than they are going to be on domestic. Because they got to fix Trumpism when it comes down to the tariffs. They got to fix trade. So anything domestic, I don't necessarily
backseat.
It's going to get a backseat. The only thing that's going to be important is marijuana in states because they want to get the revenue. Because marijuana is still Schedule 1. So the states are going to have to fight the Fed to get it removed from Schedule 1 so they can tax it. So it can be more like cocaine because cocaine is still seen as having a medical purpose. For these states to really have legitimate, because Colorado had this problem, for these states to really prop up jobs, and we know politicians love to say, we want to bring you jobs.
No jobs.
But for it to happen and for this promise, because again, Trump lost now, but he still got 2024. And I say this off camera and I'm going to say it now. I see Trump, I'm doing my Jimmy Dore. I foresee Trump supporters holding Biden-Harris more accountable than Biden-Harris supporters. You hear the protests from them like, you got to hold us accountable. Hey, AOC, we see you saying you got to hold them accountable. You made promises. But we all know that that's your way to get your base to hold on.
knows shit accountable.
They keep their base going. But I'm saying this. It's going to be Fox News that's going to hold them far more accountable than MSNBC and CNN.
I agree. Pelosi just ran unopposed. Squad ain't doing shit. Pelosi just ran unopposed. House. And they talked all that.
But you know this city is an old city. You know old people
never.
This city never age. People just get
all right. That's why I laugh at it. I don't really speak on it. I ain't got time for all that fake malarkey.
You gotta speak on it though.
The
only reason I say you gotta speak on it because in my spaces and the spaces I am,
I'm gonna speak on it real briefly. Because in the end, people will probably ask why I don't necessarily care for AOC when I am what people would consider a leftist. I don't view the left as the left. I view the left as a shield for the establishment in terms of creating a narrative that they actually do have someone pushing back on them. I think AOC may have had good intentions. I like to give her that leeway, but
so Bernie Sanders' cousin.
And I don't respect Bernie Sanders. Well, I respect Joe Biden because Joe Biden stands by what he says. Bernie Sanders and other people within the Democratic Party are weak. They aren't going to do anything. I know they aren't going to do anything. I do not respect you. Part of the reason why we don't get anywhere is because a nigga like me, they not even going to try to help put me on. We in DC, everybody always say, oh, well, why haven't you done this? Why haven't you done this? Because the city don't love me. The city don't bang with me. All of these people in the city are fake. They're frauds. And anybody who want to hop on here and bring the smoke, bring it. Because in the end, I will debate you down on your policy. I'm not even going to attack your character, which I can. But at the end, I also know that you all take cues from the same people who you come out and disparage. Everybody hates the white male patriarchy. Everybody, has this, white male patriarchy. Get back in line, AOC. Get back in line. Ilyan Omar, Joe, what did I see you? We gonna get you in here. But get back in line. Because in the end, I know y'all not about that life. Because I've been ridiculed for actually standing in a room and saying what it is that we all say. I'm not trying to hear none of that. AOC is a fraud. AOC, the squad, all of them are a fraud. I respect Joe Biden. I respect the Susan Rices. As much as I don't necessarily care for Obama, I respect them because you want to know what? They get on TV, they tell you what they're not going to do, and they don't do it. AOC and them, they do that whole mask and charade, and whole time they don't even uplift their own communities in the sense that when you talk about the CARES Act, when you talk about all of these bills that have been passed or not passed during the quote-unquote COVID that was botched, it's all pompous circumstance. It's all chest pump. I'm tired of chest pump. And again, I don't mind working with the left. I've told people, I don't mind necessarily sitting down having a conversation or any of those, making any of those concessions. But what we're not going to do also, which I have a high issue with, is you're not going to do it at the expense of African Americans. Because y'all don't want to have a conversation. The whole student, and we're having this conversation because they are online right now talking about it's a racial justice issue when prior to you wouldn't even speak on race. You shot down Ta-Nehisi Coates when he spoke on reparations. Get out of here. As we move into the next goddamn phase, because I can go on all the goddamn day. These people.
You gonna get somebody in there?
We gonna honor the time. I'm trying to figure out.
It's 7:41.
It's 7:41. Hey Quan, can you see what this charger jump with me for? Let me see, cause I don't want the battery to die. We in the groove. We in the move.
You can leave when she did.
Don't do that to me, man. Come on.
Well, I just want to know who's in.
Right, we about to hold on. I'm gonna bring it is what it is.
Full watching right now.
I'm gonna pivot.
On the YouTube.
breakout rooms. Oh, where'd my man go? You go, AQ.
No. Because I wanted to get into the next article. But I know we got somebody that I want to be respectful of people calling in.
Yeah. Hey, Quan, I don't think that don't tap that.
Is it charging now?
No. It ain't though. I don't know if it's a matter. Let me get that. Excuse me, y'all.
There we go.
Issue solved. Motherfucker, I need to be on Geek Squad. God damn. Nah, I'm just fucking. Nah. All right. Let's get back to it. I'm trying to see. I think they left out the room.
They probably did. But anyway, who was it though?
It was my man Joy, man.
Her?
Hey, come back. No, not hers. Not fan, but fan from NSU.
Yeah.
Come back there. We gonna bring y'all in, man. It's all good. We I can pivot on the schedule, man. It's all good. You know, I just try to stick to.
Got you. But no, this next article, because it bangs, it drives home what we've been saying.
Which one? Less debt. Yeah. More equity. I'm gonna go with this one because we've been talking about all of the numbers. And I'm gonna go back up to the tippy top.
Mm-hmm.
And this is less debt, more equity, lowering student debt while closing the black-white gap. And this is from Demos, very left-leaning publication.
Is it a left-leaning?
Oh, very. You know, I went to search for the left-leaning because anybody who want to attack me, let's go.
Okay.
Let's go. And we're going to get down here to how student debt exacerbates. That means exponentially amplifies. Racial wealth inequality makes it worse. So it says, despite its reputation as a great equalizer, our current system of higher education in the U.S. has served to reinforce many of the racial disparities that we see in other areas of social and economic policy. While high school graduation and college enrollment have increased among students of all racial and ethnic groups, and the differences have narrowed slightly, the gap in college completion between white students and their black counterparts is far more substantial and has actually risen over time. As we go, it says table 1 shows the differences in educational attainment between white and black populations. And as we mentioned earlier in the conversation, just so you all know that we aren't liars, general education statistics by race and ethnicity. So what we see here is it says at least a high school diploma, 93%, 86% black, 93% white. At least started college, 62% white, 52% black. At least 2 years of college, 55 to 42. And then we have at least 4 year, 38 to 23. Advanced degree, we see 20 at white, 9 to black. And then we see dropped out of college, 19 for white, 25 for black. And this is important. Why? This is important because when we talk about it being a racial initiative, racial justice initiative, in which AOC is hijacked or tried to hijack, it's not. Because when we talk about 23% of the population, it goes back to what exactly you said. It only serves the outliers. It only serves the people who, quote unquote, either believe in aspiring to and out of the community, or those who already had the resources and access to follow up and further what it is they already had. Because I'll say it helps me, but it doesn't help my brother, it doesn't help my sister, maybe one of my sisters. because she went to school, but it don't really help a lot of people who I know around me at all.
It don't help me in the sense that, again, going back to the tokenism thing, it doesn't help me, even though I care about this. What people don't understand about tokenism is that it comes with this expectation of being exceptional. And anytime you have this exceptional chip on your shoulder, you can't fail. So the hidden rules of race talks about stress, right? We don't talk about toxic stress. And we don't talk about, Dr. Fielder Jackson talks about gendered racism. And the CDC puts Black women's heart disease at a higher level because of racial things that happen that have nothing to do with money. So this, again, I want to drive home that even if they have good health insurance, because of the way doctors treat Black American women, they still have faced negative health outcomes despite their income. So while I want to drive that home is that we're talking about income and capital, but we got to get to the psychology of racism too, and understand that there's intangible things that people do that cause harm in racism.
Agreed. Now as we move on, because we ain't done.
Mm-hmm.
As everybody sees up here right now, in this first figure, median wealth and racial wealth gap among young households, age 25 through 40. White families sit at 35,800. Black families sit at 3,600. And as we move further down, but looking at the typical household does not tell the whole story. Differences are far starker among low wealth households. See figure 2 below, which we will get into next. The net worth of low wealth Black households, those at the 25th percentile, is actually negative, while low wealth white households still have a modest financial cushion. And what I'm going to say to that is, because as much as we talk about reparations or as much as we talk about Black plight, a lot of people like to insert white poverty. But what I would like to say about white poverty functions very differently from Black poverty, given that even in terms of you being in cases poor sometimes as a white, you still have access to certain levels of social capital. You still have certain levels of access to whiteness in terms of the, like you said, psychological and social interactions that give you the benefit of the doubt. Intangible. We cannot measure that. But I want everybody to see here right now, what you're seeing is white families are at 4,500, and this is not income. Not to be confused with income, because a lot of these reports and statistics come out and they conflate income with wealth, which I hate.
It's a red herring.
It is very red herring. This is wealth. 4,500. That is good when you talk about wealth. We're at a negative 6,850.
Sharecroppers.
And if we and to your point, if we take that out, because the way that they classify Black, that's Black Americans, continental Africans, so on and so forth. If we just strip that down to African Americans like us, what do you think the number would be?
I don't know. You know why I said I don't know? Because Dr. William Julius Wilson of Harvard talks about the underclass and how amongst Black Americans, we need to talk about the difference between Black Americans that are middle class and the underclass. Those who don't have access to capital, those who don't know how capital works, because they have been tied into generational poverty and having to rely on the social measures that come from the system. But I'm so glad I did this. I'm going to address that. And I already addressed that in the second white paper, the one you showed. But when I get down to the neighborhoods, because again, we got to talk about toxic stress. When we start talking about chronic disease and everything else, I'm going to talk about, how, I don't know, you was fan of you Democrats, but that protect Black women, the third white paper is calling Black women America's nurse. It's going to get down into, they were her property and how the increase with white women, but then it's going to get into the W. Du Bois, the damnation of a woman from the dark water. I like to get in there. And I'm really going to get into how Black American women have a separate claim on America.
African American women.
Black American, yeah, but I say Black ADOS all the time throughout the thing. But through there, we're going to see how their bodies were literally used, not only just as wet nurses, when I make the milk sibling joke, but we're going to also see how their bodies are constantly used to endure the emotional stress and the emotional labor of racism, which Dr. Jackson calls gender racism, bringing NIH references, how I like to do it. We got to show that if you want to protect Black women, that starts with the neighborhoods. And how you care for Black women inside the hospitals.
And how you care for these women.
If you care for them, and it's the truth, it's like if you care, here's the thing I don't like about, and I'm going to get on my soapbox on this one. Here's the thing I don't like about the arguments we have intra-culturally about Black people.
Mm-hmm.
We don't give each other enough space to be vulnerable and hear each other's problems. But I'm not going to go too deep in that on camera because you're not going to use that against me.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, we're going to move on to the rest of this article.
Mm-hmm.
Student loan we are at student loan policy matters for reducing the racial wealth gap. These results speak to the importance of careful public policy design. If policymakers, gotta get my Dr. Umar, the nigga said that shit 5 times. I'm concerned about the growing racial wealth gap, as well as the growing level of educational debt among today's young people. They should design interventions that not only reduce the overall burden of student debt, but do so in ways that will not expand the existing racial wealth divides. I moved down to another table in which we add the Latino perspective. And it goes on to say, our model suggests that loan reduction policies may play out differently for Latino white wealth gap, perhaps due to differences in educational attainment. Universal debt reduction policies would benefit Latinos modestly, but would expand racial wealth gap among both typical and low wealth households, even when the policy is targeted squarely at borrowing, making $50,000 and below. So what I'll say to that is, hey, Latinos, look, man, wealth class bring y'all over here because they trying to exploit y'all. Y'all the new niggas. I'm just trying to tell y'all, as a person who has experienced this and been in this, y'all have to see the game that's being played. Because I don't know if you can see the data right here. They go down and they don't even juxtapose it to white. It's just Black and Latino. And the problem that I have with that is that our communities are close, but what we have to understand about the Black and the Latino community is that the Black African-American ADOS community is the inception of America. The Latino community, though they have suffered and experienced their own plights in America, come on top of that. But we are neck and neck. You all are up next to be the next exploited. I want y'all to understand. You don't gotta like it, you don't gotta love us, but understand and take heed to what is being done. This white transfer of wealth that is quote unquote student debt loan forgiveness is not in favor of those who wish to advocate and move against the establishment. if you, as a Latino or Black American, are in support of this, I want you to understand that you are going to have to codify the establishment that much more because your community overall, and this is the numbers, just look at the numbers, will be decimated as a result. Go ahead.
What I was going to say is that LA, when you listen to LA music and you see LA culture, that black and brown divide, they understand it well. Because that's one of the things that we also got to talk about as adults. We don't come from the same cities. And one thing Americans need to talk about is that that American GDP comes from basically 50 countries that live under one federation. Our GDPs are not the same, our industries are not the same. But what I want to say, what I want to get into is that there's a lot of brown, I don't like to use it, but brown, I don't know if you want to say Latino, Latinx community, they get it. Elizabeth Acevedos, I want to say that again, Elizabeth Acevedos. She writes, she's a great poetess and everything else. She's Dominican, she has a Black husband, they get it. They get it. There's Latino people who get it. Hip hop is a perfect example of that. John Leguizamo, he's not a hip hop artist. He gets it. It's not. Our communities get it. You know what the problem is? People keep waiting for the TV to say it's okay. They get it. They get it. People wait for the TV to say it's okay to talk to your Black neighbor. It's okay to talk to your trans neighbor. Why do we gotta wait for the goddamn TVs? It's like, yeah, duh. I did that yesterday. I don't have a problem with anybody. I have a problem with an asshole that's telling me I gotta work for them because they want to waste money. Because when we talk about wealth this time, we can't just talk about wealth and not look at the environmental impact of how wealth consumes natural resources. And if we really get into racism, in the 20th century, all of the toxic things were inside of the brown, Black, Asian communities. So the EPA is just as important to Black people and brown people as the central banks, because the toxic things were in your neighborhood. They are in your neighborhoods. It's not just your fault that most of your kids are born with asthma. That is not a coincidence. And as we start talking about climate and talking about climate refugees, those who can't afford the AC through the summer is going to feel it the most. We have to get to understand that racism is not just a monetary thing. It cannot be paid for. We cannot act like that the legacy of segregation, genderized racism, sexism can be paid for. It's going to take a behavioral change as well.
So, before we skip over, what's your thoughts, Quan? What you got to say about the issue of student debt relief and racial justice and it being a measure to, quote unquote, close the racial wealth gap? We just like to hear your thoughts, man.
Like I said, for me, I just feel like the Democrats always have this trick of, okay, we're the party of everyone, so we're going to allude to doing policy that includes everyone, but at the end of the day, it serves the very top. And again, we cannot afford another one of those policies because, I mean, you can literally go through every era and just rattle off the policies and they all function just like this. Every last one of them function just like this. If you look at the education policy, functions just like this. The race to the top for Obama functions just like this. Every last one of our policies is, okay, let's let the elite get the breaks and pray to God that the opportunities that they create, which they never do, trickles down to the rest of everyone so that people can move up. That whole, what was it, the rising tide floats all boats.
Yeah.
That's been the last 30, our lifetime, if you want to be honest. And it hasn't led to anything substantial. We live in a world where the last amendment was in 91. And look how much the world has changed since 91. And you don't think we don't need any new policies?
When you saying constitutional amendments, that's heavy.
I mean,
I hear what you're saying.
I mean, but I'm just saying.
No, I'm agreeing with you though. That we are in a radically different world since 1991.
And there's been no new,
especially when it comes down to data, we do need to.
Like in Congress, we just don't have any new protections for people since 91. Really? That's where we at? Where we at, politics? Okay.
That's where we at.
Politics.
Okay. Okay. But that's where I'm at with it. Like, come on now. 30 years and nothing substantial. There's not been any substantial policies that helped anyone outside of this whole rising tide lifts all boats types of policy.
We need an advanced economy though. I agree with everything you're saying. You do whatever you're doing. We need an advanced economy. We gotta understand time now and time poverty and how much time matters. But that's something I won't get into in the white paper lab. I just had to get on that.
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get into this next in terms of what we get wrong about closing the racial wealth gap, as we are talking about education, student loans being a way to do that and execute that. I want to give a shout out to Antonio Moore, to your point in that the data and everything that is new and now, we are far behind in terms of, how we're being able to access and what we have access to. So I want to thank them for even doing this. And we just going to focus on one part of the list as we talking about education today. But I wanted to talk about the greater educational attainment or more work effort on the part of Blacks and how that doesn't necessarily close the racial wealth gap. And it says, what I highlighted, however, it is apparent that for Blacks, getting a college degree or graduate degree is far from sufficient to close the racial wealth gap. At every level of educational attainment, the median wealth among Black families is substantially lower than white families. White households with bachelor's degrees or postgraduate education, such as PhD, MD, or JDs, are more than 3 times as wealthy as Black households with the same degree attainment. Moreover, on average, a Black household with a college-educated head has less wealth than a white family whose head did not even obtain a high school diploma. It takes a postgraduate education for a Black family to have comparable levels. And if you all look at the data set that is up here, what you'll see is post-college, college, some college, high school, less than high school. And if you see this post-college number is at 455,000 versus the Black number, which is 141,000. College, which is you graduated in 4 years and you got your bachelor's, that's 268K roughly for whites, and then 70K for Blacks. Some college, you maybe not have graduated, you went on to get your maybe what accumulates to be an associates. That's $135K roughly for whites and $18,000 for blacks. High school, $118K for whites, $6,000 roughly for blacks. Less than high school, $82K. It's not far from my salary for whites, and then $2,000 blacks. And as we all know, the average salary of black families is roughly $40K. And that's combined with two people. As we move down further, it says black students are more likely to take on student loans and accumulate student loan debt. And they are more likely than white students to drop out of the university because of financial concerns, going back to our earlier conversation around social capital, their family lineage, and having those wealth shares and transfers. It says, ironically, their wealth position could deteriorate. That's the conversation we were having earlier. As all failure is not the same, because of their intense motivation to pursue higher education. While education does not appear to be the great equalizer, it could be argued alternatively that hard work can close the wealth gap, of course, since blacks face a higher unemployment rate than whites at every level of education. The difference in wealth ultimately could be due to the difference in employment status. And I want to touch on and keep on the discussion that we were having earlier amongst ourselves in terms of all failure is not the same. Because, see, when people have conversations around like a Jeff Bezos, for example, and they say, oh, well, everybody can do that. What they don't understand is having access to people who in the room, I could say, Quentin, I need 200K, I need 150K for this business endeavor. Quan, I need 150K for this business endeavor. That's a different level of failure from you taking your already consumed debt and taking that debt and then the income that you get on top of that debt, what I'm doing now, to try to build something. Because I don't have that foundation abundant me to say, oh, yeah, I need y'all to run me that. And again, per Jeff Bezos, that money was given with the understanding that there was only a 20-30% chance of the actual business idea succeeding. Mm-hmm. You go to a family member and say, look, I got this business idea.
They gonna cuss your ass. Well, they gonna cuss your ass off.
They gonna ask you for that money.
But you know, I wanted to jump in and say, Master P talked about the same thing. Master P talks about it, and what I love about Percy Miller is that he's a real CEO. He's gonna tell you how difficult it is to get capital as a black person. Mm-hmm. And I talk about this, you know, how my mother is and how me and my sister are. It's like we talk about the difference between being black and being white is that white people can restructure their debt better. Mm-hmm. It's true, because if we really get to these economic tools, and here's why we keep getting a lot of blowback as quote unquote black and ADOS, is that a lot of people living on credit, but
a lot of people living on credit.
But that's not here and there. I want you to get back to what you was on though. I was listening.
No, it's all good, because in the end, it still speaks. It still speaks to that. I know a lot of people who live on credit, and because we've been trained to live on credit, and because we've been trained to aspire, and because we've been trained to believe and have hope, we don't necessarily see the cons that are being ran against us. In the sense that that person who you can go to brunch with, or that white, Asian, or whatever POC who's transitioned into whiteness, they have a certain level of social capital or a level of subsidy that undergirds their life.
That they don't have to have the high income.
Exactly. Where I'm going and paying for everything, you can say, hey, my dude, I need A, B, C, D.
That's why I was sitting over here when you were showing that joint with the white kids. It was like, it's not on the same level, but that's kind of my life.
No, I get you. Yeah. And this is where, you know, I have my critique on Black affluent people who want to speak against those who don't necessarily matriculate.
Call them the underclass. Why I say that? Because Dr. Wilson, you are talking about the underclass. You are talking about the people who literally have never had a start. Yeah. Literally, like when I say call them the underclass, because at that point in time, those affluent Black people who I can't stand because they fake as fuck.
Fake as fuck.
They be, oh my God, I'm for the same things. Like, no, I got real anger issues because I've literally seen bodies on the floor. I've literally had car explosions in the alley. I've literally seen a lot of things that my body won't forget. And that's why I don't like y'all being fake. But really, call them the underclass. Call them the You're talking about the underclass.
Absolutely.
The individual, the untouchables of the hood.
Because in the end, a lot of people push, and this is where I tell people,
Cardi B,
I stand in the middle in most cases. Because I've reached the point where people would consider me, quote unquote, the affluent Black. I don't ideologically align or stand with the quote unquote affluent Black unless they have not severed their tie to understanding that, look, you know me, I'll say I'm lucky. Mm-hmm. I could have easily been a nigga around the corner on Melon.
People we play in the alley with, literally. It's that close.
It's that close.
It's that close.
And so, with that always being said, I always stand in the middle and have an issue when I tell people both sides. Because both sides really talk to each other. Like, I get the argument of the affluent in terms of standards and all those things, but I also get the argument of the abject poverty of y'all niggas don't care about us in that sense. Y'all want to do the same thing that white people do.
I get you, no. I totally agree. Only reason I say abject poverty is that because somebody will ping you technically. We live in relative poverty. Abject poverty is what continental Africans talk about. And that's why I can't remember his name, but he was like the first Nigerian elected to Congress. And I laughed so hard. He was on BBC. I'll show you. Nah, don't talk about it on camera because it's too close. Okay. After the camera was like, this nigga's a bum. He won't stand for anything. And most Nigerian Americans will tell you this, is that they are the elite of Nigeria.
Yeah.
That's the only way that they're here. I went to high school with them. Literally, I don't care. I've been yelled at by Nigerians. Son, you would not do a science project, Big Daddy. Like literally, I am mimicking a teacher. I don't care. Those Nigerian Americans won't tell you that they're elite. The same way there's a lot of Southern Black people who move to the North and go to HU, but they're elite of the Southern Blacks. We have to, in America, understand there's a lot of Black elites with motherfucking white masks on, pretending that they come for the same struggle. It's like, no, you're dumb.
At all.
And you stop me from getting actual poverty. And this is why it's so important to me. Oh, there we go. My eyes feel better. This is why this is so important to me. Because 7 out of 10 Black middle class fall into poverty. Because white people, when I say white people, I mean capital believes that it has done enough. Capital needs to understand it has not done enough. And if you keep making capital think it has done enough, please, I know why you wear the mask and what the mask does to you. I have decided not to wear the mask. And despite what you believe, white people respect people for who they are. White people can see when you're lying to them. They're human.
And just to cut into that, I just wish people understood how close they are to the abject poverty. Everybody in these coming years is going to really find out just how much one bad situation can have them slide all the way.
I don't know why they acting like they forgot when the motherfucking government shut down.
That's what I'm saying.
In a week.
And it's like, for me, what's so disturbing to me is how people literally just forgot Hurricane Katrina was a thing. Like, this country already showed its cards. They've been on the table for years. And I don't see how people can think that you can see literally a whole nation tell those people that they're refugees and still think, oh, I can still. No.
People
how?
Comfortable.
How?
Comfortable. Chris had just talked about all the time about the magical thinking that people do. It is a whole term called unlogic, but that's neither here nor there. Do we have one more thing where we open it up to people?
We are opening it up to people. You know, if you are there.
Do we have a comment over there that's nice?
Okay, so yeah, we have Jordan C. Woodard. He said,
"Call in, man. Call back in, man."
He said,
"I seen you."
I wonder if they talk about the stress that student loan debt puts on co-signers, expected income to get out.
No, I'm saying college. We need him to call in. Is he still online?
He called in at first.
It don't show like, brother.
He got you.
Call in.
And he said having money grants you access to find ways to make more money.
It does. Capital builds capital. Did he pop in?
Yeah, he said yeah.
Call in, please, because that's a valuable conversation. It's a valuable and it's a needed conversation. This vet, I love it. She went off the other night. This is the only reason I'm on camera right now. Because when I saw a vet go off, people was just like, "Oh yeah, oh yeah."
YC. Hey,
he right there, bro.
Blue participants admit. I'm gonna need you to
You turn on the video.
As to start video, I know you're ugly, but come on. No, I'm just fucking with you. You gotta get you so we know we talking to real people.
Oh, there we go.
What's going on, guys? How you doing?
I'm good at yourself, fam.
I'm all right. I'm glad I tuned in at the right time because I hope all you guys are doing well. Wish you guys a happy holiday in advance, by the way.
Thank you, man.
Much love. Same to you.
Yes, thank you. Congratulations on your nuptials as well, Sing.
Thank you.
But one thing I asked about in regards to it. One thing I was about was the student loan policies regarding co-signers, because if people who are coming out of college can't even earn the expected income, how do you think that affects the co-signers? They're stressed because they can't get money themselves. It's pretty much like credit, like you was talking about earlier. It's like we're going to college on credit.
Yep.
And we have to pay it back.
Yeah.
And sometimes you cannot pay it back. There are so many cases where you cannot pay all of that stuff back. And I know personally, that's something that I'm going through, and it puts a lot of mental stress on people who co-sign for you, like elderly parents. They invest in you. They believe that everything is going to fall through, but they don't understand that there's so much that we're working against, that if one thing falls, we're not going to be able to make that income. We're not going to be able to pay all those loans back. And those loan sharks, they're always calling. It's a lot of mental stress that comes with it. And I just wish that from young that we had some type of workshop, an actual real workshop that incentivized younger folk to invest in education wisely. If you know that you're not going to be able to afford to get an education, to earn a good living, don't do it, because it's not cost beneficial. It's not.
So let me ask
I mean,
you this, fam. Let me ask you this.
go ahead.
So we can get a view of some context. Are you a college graduate?
Yes, I am.
And what college did you graduate from?
The proud alma mater, Norfolk State University.
If you feel comfortable with telling everybody, I had to have what 60K a student loan debt. It's in my book. If everybody want to check it out, Death of a Nigga Boy is in there.
Sluttish plug.
I wrote it down to speak to, again, one of the things that, speaking to your point, YC Yvette Cornell did when she first started was, everybody who came on and had the conversation announced their student loan debt as a form of vulnerability and a form of understanding where we are as a collective. So with that being said, being at 60, 70, some people up into the 200s, 250s.
It gets up there.
Yeah, it gets up there. A lot of people, way more people than 60.
Some people like some people's been in school for 8 to 10 years and they just thought, oh, I'm just going to get this degree. I'm just going to get this degree, not knowing that monster that you're building is getting stronger and you're not going to be able to overcome it over time. That interest builds.
That's a house.
That's a building complex.
So would you say that student debt relief, though it may be a good deed in the way that it has been proposed to us, do you think that it is a racial justice issue, given that we're talking about $10,000 to $50,000 being absolved with constraints?
I feel like there's some catch with that. 10 to 50K is not going to be enough for the average person that has student debt. I mean, me personally, I have over 70. And that's just life experiences. It didn't take education as serious as I should have, but nonetheless, you live and you learn. But that 10 to 50 is not enough. Like, if I were them, I would just absolve it completely, just as not necessarily like a you owe us type of thing, but more of it's for the betterment of the public. Because as far as these jobs go, as far as this economy is going, it's going to get worse. Like we haven't even begun to go into the effects of the pandemic and everything, and how it's going to affect job opportunities, earnings of income. I saw a post that you put about Uber. People who do Uber and stuff, they're going to get hit with income cuts soon. It's just like America owes us, pretty much. The country owes us.
Okay, so I have a question for the whole group. What about the solution? I read about some of the solutions. What about increasing the federal Pell Grant as opposed to alleviating the actual debt?
Here's the problem with that. I'm not a member of the underclass. It looked like we got somebody else. The problem with that is that the Pell Grant, because of my mother's income, you become paper rich, cash poor. And so that means that I also have to take on a lot of debt. I also have to deal with a lot of things. And if I'm unable to do that, it's a problem. So it's not a Pell Grant thing. Like I said earlier, if we want to make this a racial justice issue, let's get it to the point where HBCUs, which most Black kids want to go to, very few, I'm one of the ones that want to go to a PWI because I don't care about white people. Most HBCUs have an endowment problem. So they can't offer the same financial aid as the MIT or anything else because they don't have the alumni association to donate. So every federal government budget should have an endowment large enough to HBCUs that every $8 so Black kid can go there for free. That makes it a racial justice issue because it helps generationally. It helps with legacy. A one-time gift of $1.6 trillion is no different than them giving money straight to the banks.
So
You want to know
with
something
that being
interesting, Q?
I'm listening.
To to kind of also add to your point, a little personal anecdote. When I first started college, financial aid office laughed because my folks made too much together for me to get financial aid. I mean, they worked in a union in New York, so they were making so much bread that we really couldn't be any scholarship money given to me. And I had like 3.7, close to a 4.0 going out of high school.
Yeah.
So I understand like that racial justice piece is very real.
It's real. Go ahead, though.
No, so I was just going to ask before we let you go, my kind sir. What do you think should be done and to make it a racial justice issue? And before I let you go, what I think should take place in terms of making it a racial justice issue. I think that we have to get out of the mindset that it has to be for all. And I think that we have to get into policies that hone in and directly benefit specific groups and aggregate data in that way so that we can pinpoint specific groups. And to speak to YC, I think that absolutely, reparations does have to come before a lot of these initiatives, because what happens is you only reinforce the institutions in a lot of cases that are already in existence, and you bolster them in a way that, like you mentioned earlier, in terms of you're giving not only infusions of wealth to white families, but white institutions at the same time, who will, even if you have white families who are in good faith, will be co-opted by radical, malicious, racist institutions that operate on a very strict historical economic line. And so with that being said, all of that being said, is what do you see as a solution to, if you don't see it as a racial justice issue, what do you see and how do you see it becoming a racial justice issue in terms of reformatting the proposal of student debt forgiveness?
This question's for me. Okay. It's kind of tough because I don't see just a simple solution here, because if the question is going to come up of, if there's relief for one, why isn't there relief for all? And then everyone that doesn't get it is going to feel slighted.
Yeah, I can hear you on that, but I'll always say that is the politician's job to push back on the public, because I also have issue with politicians who continue to appease the public despite it being in the detriment to the overall society. Because where I don't get mad and where I don't get upset anymore about people shitting on African Americans is a caution. Like, look, the regulations and stipulations and restrictions and the protected status that comes along with helping African Americans get their reparations as it pertains to America helps all Black people, helps white people, helps ethnic white people. Because why? Those codes, Black codes, those foundational documents, when we talk about our founders, are built on exploitation. So I don't get mad anymore, because if, again, shameless, another plug, if you read Death of a Nigger Boy, I can't wait. But if everybody allows us to die off, that their kids will reap and sow the seeds of allowing that to happen. Because what people don't realize is American capitalism, the way it is set up as of now, is that it will continue and have to find another group to exploit, which is why you always hear me say the Latinos are the next niggas. Not to be offensive, not to be egregious, but somebody has to be the bottom. And because sanctuary cities and all of those things are set up the way that they are, I see them the next in terms of the data that I'm looking at, in terms of they are the weakest group in terms of economic fortitude. Their sanctuary cities have been set up in the same fashion the ghettos have been set up in when we talk about Black American communities. And so look, if you don't want to side with us now, I'm just a nigga trying to tell everybody, white people, Asian people, Latino people, Dominican people, whatever people you want to be, whatever people you identify as. Look, America, if you help African Americans right now, we can collapse and we will see the sun set on the British Empire, which they said it would never.
Walk right up to the sun, hand in hand. Walk right up to the sun, we won't land. I'm gonna play Nas. As soon as we drop, I'm gonna play Nas for this.
But hey,
thank you, fam.
We appreciate you for calling in, fam. Much love. Definitely share the video, like the video, comment, man. Hey, get more comments because we love the conversation and everything like that. But hopefully we can get some more people in before we zone out for the rest of the evening. Be safe with your fam. Much love to you, your lady, and everything that y'all got going on. And be safe. Be strong, brother. Okay?
No problem. I'm going to tune in on the video side. So I ain't going nowhere.
Let me see how I do this.
You got somebody else?
No, not yet, man.
Got you.
Okay.
But it is what it is. If all y'all...
But just out of my willful ignorance, I always thought that the federal Pell Grant program was pretty good with low income.
Nah, man.
You know what I mean?
It's picky and choosy.
Everybody say that you can be paper rich and cash poor.
Yeah.
I'm here to tell you, being Black in America is expensive. It's expensive because most of your income goes to paying the things that are subsidized by other people. It's so dangerous. No, I'm so serious. I'm glad I'm writing this third paper. If you're shooting your gun in the neighborhood, you are a problem to Black people. You are an enemy to Black people. Because those kids, although they may not get hit, you are traumatizing them. And I'm one of them. If you sitting around and you treating and berating Black women, you are a problem to Black America. Why? Because chronic heart disease is so bad it's documented that Black women are older. Their chronological age can be the same, but the stresses on them makes them older than white
Get
women.
on the soapbox.
You are an enemy to Black America. If you, and I'm going to Tony Kincaid. See, this is the problem I have when we say protect Black women. Tony Kincaid, the anthology of a Black woman. Which Black woman are we talking about? Why are we only want to uplift a certain type of Black woman that's corporate in herself? How about we talk about the spectrum of Black women? We can talk about the spectrum of Black women when it comes down to colorism, but we don't talk about the spectrum of Black women when it comes down to ideological thought. Not every Black woman is a liberal. Some Black women are conservative, and that doesn't make them against America. So we're not pro-Black as much as we are pro-token. And what I love about Yvette Carnell saying it is like, we got to get past this tokenism. And when I get down to this when I get down to the America's nurse, I'm going to be real. It's like, you can't say protect Black women if you're not willing to take care of their mental, emotional, psychological, and physical health. And don't tell me I'm the problem when you don't allow me to become a doctor. You send me to jail. You don't allow me to become a lawyer so I can protect them. Because Black women, yes, they are the ones with the most education in the Black community, but they still can't get the same level of capital. They can't get the same level of access so that their businesses are viable.
Yes.
We got to talk about this. If you want to save Black women outside of save the Black women vote, if you really want to save Black women, you got to start empowering Black women.
Hold on. Fuck that. I'm jumping in. They told me to jump in. I don't know who this is. It's nobody. If we talk about saving Black women, stop allowing yourself to be used and abused.
But they silence the ones.
They do.
They silence the ones that know the bullshit.
They do.
They silence. They're going to pick me.
And we got to protect all of them.
I'm listening.
You got to protect the ghetto Black women. Protect fat Black women. Protect all. No, because we get into like the whole you gotta look the part in order to get protection.
No, I'll say this. I would agree with you on that extent, but I would never ever push unhealthiness. You know me.
I mean, yeah, but I'm just
At this
saying,
point.
everybody should deserve the same treatment, regardless of whether or not you fit
A
the
particular persona.
Exactly.
I got you.
Phenotype, yeah.
But with that being said, again, I need Black women to allow Black men to protect them.
This is
As you know, I've been in situations. I want to smoke. Let's go. But Black women like playing proximity. And I can't play proximity. I'm just trying to get in and throw a little quick jazz, let's get out. But proximity is there. To your point, you know me, the stance I've taken, I'm gonna let the affluent Black women dildo the poor Black women to death. Because Black girl magic is a narrative that I can't argue against. When I speak on it, it's toxic masculinity. I think we all need to protect each other because I don't believe that Black women protect Black men and Black men protect Black women when we talk about collectively. I think as a group, we are a wild, wild west. There is no standard. There is no who should do what.
We don't see value in each other.
Yeah.
I agree. And that's collective.
Yeah.
Or if you look the part, you got the value.
And
if you don't look it,
no, you're fetishized. That's something different.
This is true.
And to like anybody who's watching, what I want you to understand is that it's not an attack on you singularly.
Yeah,
we're talking about a group.
We're talking brand narratives.
Because I fuck with Black women.
Who raised me?
Black women.
Who raised me? They protect me to a certain degree, but
that's a more nuanced conversation.
And it's all camera.
Yeah,
that's all camera. That's for when we have y'all at the brunch and we serving y'all. I want to do that. Have a Black women brunch for all the men serving them. You want to know why? Because they gonna give us mimosas.
That's a good exit out. Because before we leave out, what I want us to do is again have that standard. All conversations cannot be had. Moving forward, all conversations in the Black community and the African community cannot be had on camera, in public, on Twitter, Facebook, on all these social media sites. People extract that data and use it against us. As I always say on this show, we cannot allow people to have that insight and foresight into us. I don't mind you coming up to me, digging at me behind closed doors. We can do that all day, every day. But let's move more strategic. Let's acknowledge what America is. Let's acknowledge that the exit polls was split. Let's acknowledge that America is racist. Whether we got Joe Biden or Donald Trump, let's move out of the framework of our peers and our colleagues. And this is no slight to white people overall, but you all have blind spots.
Yeah.
You all are willing to make deals that are on the backs of our community. Black people, African Americans specifically, we have to move away from that. We have to look. They're moving on a whole different ideology. I'm not completely against it. In some cases, when we talk about the left, when we talk about people who I do believe have good intent but just don't understand, and I call on those people to bring me and people like you and people like me into the room that aren't affluent, that speak for the niggas.
The underclass.
Mm-hmm. Underclass, I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying the underclass.
No, it's okay, because you know, with censorship going on, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
We touched on it, but we're gonna come back to it because the
That's
censorship is going to a higher another level. But look, man, we appreciate everybody who tuned in again tonight. Thank y'all for coming back on the weekend after married, everything like that. Thank you for all the blessings that I got, all of the wishes that I got in regard to my family on social media, real time, real life. Thank you. We appreciate that. We love that. And again, this is a long-term endeavor. If you want to reach out to us, like us on Instagram. You can DM us on Instagram at the Gilded Sages. The Twitter is the same handle, the Gilded Sages. And then if you want to reach out to us on email at gildedsages@gmail.com, please feel free. The lines are open.
Or hit us up on our personal Instagram.
Exactly.
DM
Black
me.
Anglo-Saxon,
DM me.
Inquisitive Q.
Quan the Poet.
And
28.
so we always here. We all do different things. And we here for everybody. And I can say that I speak for everybody in the room is that we want to grow, we want to learn, we want to have those interactions. And so with that being said, it's a good night, good conversation. I think we came down to it. All of the links in the description are below. Student debt relief is not a racial justice issue. It is a great endeavor in terms of good faith. I understand what people are trying to do. I'm not completely against it, but I think that those things have to be put into a different perspective and put through a different level of rigorous regimen in terms of trying to get to the end goal that you say you want to have when that thing happens, when you're going about creating that policy. So with all that being said, we thank y'all. We appreciate y'all. Like the video, share the video, comment before, after. We love y'all. Be safe. Stay COVID free as we see all of the, everything turning back up. And we wish y'all the best. We wish y'all well. Good night. Did any one of you men have any words before we dip out?
Yeah, you sound like a fucking uncle that won't leave. Come on, man.